look good, brother. You look good. All right. 5, 4, 3, 2.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace and greetings. I am your brother Leroy Muhammad, representing the family staff of the 10,000 Fearless. I'd like to welcome you out once again to installment number 4 of 5. Tonight, we're going to be indulging in the subject titled, The Valence of Violence. A fake veil creating a destructive reality. It promises to be very thought-provoking. In light of the things that have happened within the last couple of months and the seemingly difficult setback due to COVID, this time period has allowed us, the family staff, and those of us who have joined on to the 10,000 Fearless, to take an opportunity to dialogue among ourselves and open up some avenues of thought, stimulation, which we pray these presentations have given you an opportunity to be indulged with us and be inspired and stimulate some thoughts among you and your friends and others. We take this time, as we've taken all of the time, in a very serious mode. So tonight, we have a brilliant group of people with us again. And I'm going to bring forth our moderator, who has done a magnificent job in navigating through some very, I'll call it, volatile subject matter. So without much more ado from me, I'm going to bring forth to you and introduce to some our brother, the man I call the Jabril one, brother Gabriel Muhammad. Stay tuned, put your seatbelts on, and let's go on this ride. Peace and blessings.
Peace and blessings. Assalamu alaikum, family. As Brother Leroy so eloquently said, my name is Brother Gabriel Muhammad. Thank you so much for that introduction, beloved brother. I am a proud member of the Fruit of Islam, the Nation of Islam, here in Philadelphia, Muhammad Mosque number 12. I also go by Jabril Engineer on social media. I am the proud Director of Engineering for Original Man Scientific. It's a research and development company geared towards delivering the advantages of R&D to your community, and the proud co-host of the STEM Files, where we highlight the best and brightest in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics as the voice of STEM talent in Black culture. Family, as was stated, tonight's title is The Valence of Violence, a false veil creating a destructive reality. This is part 4 of a 5-part series. Violence Averted, Accepting a New Paradigm, Where Do We Go From Here, was part 1. Part 2, we talked about trauma, the ticking time bomb. Part 3 dealt with self-governance. It was self-governance, self-policing, a community rebuilt. For those of us in the sciences, we may look at the word valence and think about, are they talking about chemistry, electrons, and how they're shared? No, this term valence comes out of the school of Scientology, particularly Dianetics, and it is an identity complete with mental image pictures of somebody other than the identity selected by oneself. We felt that this was a particularly important word as it relates to our topic, because in our community, you could say that a sort of a lore has been around violence. It's been a sort of identity taken up in our community, not by all, but by some, glorified in some communities and, not glorified in others. So we want to just unpack this a little bit and understand how it has become a valence, but the fact that it is false. It is not our identity as a people, but is one we should understand in terms of what it has done and be able to move forward from it more healthily. Lastly, before I bring on our illustrious panelists, I would be remiss if I did not say happy 25th anniversary of the Million Man March, 1995, with the theme of atonement, reconciliation, and responsibility. I would not be here without that day. I know for some of us who were present know the power of that day, but we have to continue with that theme and continue in that spirit going forward. So without further ado, I want to introduce our illustrious panelists and have them come on the screen at this time. Awesome, awesome. Oh, the beautiful faces. I see the smiles, the light. We're on and popping, family. Praise be to Allah. Family, family, family. Listen, all those audience members watching, listening, we want your questions. So go into the comments. Please give us questions to help move our discussion along so that we may give you as much, if you want to call it a game, or insights as possible with tonight's topic. So without further ado, we just want to go down the line and have everybody introduce themselves very quickly as we move forward. So Brother Gabriel, you want to start us off? Peace, beloved.
Peace, family. Always good seeing the family out here today. My name is Brother Gabriel Bryant. I work with several organizations, particularly the Black Philly Radical Collective. Happy to be here today working on behalf of the community. And once again, long live the legacy of the Million Man March.
Praise be to Allah. Brother Dontay, assalamu alaikum, sir.
Sir, walaikum salam. Peace, family. My name is Brother Dontay Muhammad, a graduate of North Carolina A&T State University, engineer, just like Brother Jabril. Involved with a couple of different things. You know, a proud member of the Nation of Islam, with the Fruit of Islam. Involved in 10K Fearless, as well as a couple of different STEM organizations around the country.
Praise be to Allah. Thank you, sir. Sister Jasmine.
Yes, sir. Jasmine X. Philadelphia born and raised, native, Temple University alumni, where I studied economics and religious studies, community activist, artist, activist for young women, and proud member of the Nation of Islam, specifically the Muslim Girls in Training, MGT, GCC Vanguard, at the forefront of the fight for our people and especially our young women.
Oh, praise be to Allah. I didn't know you went to Penn State for that. Praise be to Allah. That's what's up. Sister Zuna, how are you, Queen? Peace and love.
Peace and love, everyone. I'm grateful to be here tonight. I am a mother of two beautiful sons. I am a revolutionary and rebel. I am the owner and founder at Answer the Bell. It's a peer counseling company. And I am also an active community activist at the North Philly Peace Park. And I'm just grateful to be here on this Friday night with y'all.
Oh, praise you so much. And your smile is duly noted and appreciated, Queen. Thank you so much. Last but certainly not least, my big brother, mentor, I call him Unc, fellow member of the ministry class of Muhammad Muslim 12, Brother Lamond. Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Wa alaikum salam, beloved brother. Peace and love to all you beautiful brothers and sisters. Again, Lamond Muhammad, proud member of the Nation of Islam, student in the ministry of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, community activist, lifelong educator and mentor, and just happy to be here. Proud graduate of Temple University, and also a proud graduate student of the great Lincoln University. So I'm here to add on the bill with my brothers and sisters to talk about this very great topic, and thank you for having me once again.
Yes, sir. All praise to Allah. Well, family, as you can see, we've been rocking out with an awesome group of panelists, right? Everyone with diverse backgrounds, coming from different areas, whether it be education, STEM, religious studies, activism, right? But we all are joined here today for one common cause, right? Which is to talk about tonight's topic. So as we get into the first question, which will be for Sister Camille, I'm reminded again, going back to what today is first and foremost, right? 25th anniversary of the Million Man March. And that was on the call of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan for 1 million Black men to take off on a Monday, show up on that mall for the theme of atonement, reconciliation, responsibility. This question kind of hits close to home because it's kind of in that same theme as it pertains to violence, but particularly with fatherhood. So Sister Zuna, if you would not mind unpacking this for us, how much or what part does the absence of fathers in the household attribute to domestic and street violence? Yes, ma'am, you're muted. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Look, I was eager to talk. Apparently, I was eager to talk.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
So, again, for me, I think that plays a very huge part. You know, for a simple answer, I think that plays a very huge part with the absence of fathers in our community. I believe that that's something that plagues our community currently, to have fathers absent from our household. And again, just as you mentioned, on this anniversary, when we can gather so many men, young men, old men, and we still be in a way plagued with this issue 25 years later, right? I believe that there's something deeper there, consciously, subconsciously, that our brothers grow up seeing and repeating these patterns, right? So to not have a man present, again, I'm a mother of 2 sons, to not have a man present in a boy's life growing up, where will he get his ideologies for how it is to be a man, right? You know, I think that there's instances where there obviously are men who come from single mother homes and progress, you know, they're men who grow up to be successful, right? But what is a man like when he can be whole from both of those parents, right?
Right.
So if we send our children, you know, we have our children repeating these cycles of being in a home with just a mother, or even to just not have a father figure there, because maybe there are men around, right? But they aren't necessarily, right? They aren't necessarily showing these young men a way that's feasible, you know, a way that's going to be leading a successful life. Then I think that, of course, those young men will still seek that out. They're still going to find a way to be a man. They're going to hear people talking about what it is to be a man, right? They're going to see what looks like, you know, older men, right? And they're going to mimic what they do. They want to imitate that, right? Recently, I was watching something that was talking about if art imitates life or if we imitate art, right? So then that's another thing that comes into play, is the media, which I think is very huge in the way of how things happen as far as violence, domestic violence in our communities. So if you don't have that man to mimic, to follow, to teach you, to give you these values as a young boy, because your father is absent, because you don't have positive male role models, then where will you get your ideology for becoming a man? You more than likely will just look to the television, because that's what's easy. That's what's right there. And they make sure that it's there. You know what I mean? The media is going to give you the picture that they want you to portray, the picture that they want you to reenact, right? And when that comes to Black men on television, what is that?
Right.
What is that? What are the values behind that? You know, and when you leave your children idle to watch the television and they are seeing the negative stereotypes of Black men, and you never have a conversation to educate them otherwise, then you know, they're left to their devices in that way. You know what I mean? So I think that absolutely, the absence of fathers in the home, that's something that we need to get on reconciling, something that needs to be really sought after, how we create better homes for our future generations. We really absolutely need the fathers in the home.
Absolutely. I have a bit of an echo. Could everyone mute themselves really quickly so I can see? Okay, I think it's going. Okay, sorry about that. You said so much in that, and you know, again, going back to clearing some words, you talked about there being men or not being men in the home. And, you know, sometimes when we look at this question, we said the absence of fathers. Father is a title earned, not so much just a title that you get because you passed some sperm into that birth canal and been able to, you know, get a child to come through, right? You know, in the Nation of Islam, Sunnah and Sonori always like to talk about how a father is one who takes you farther, right? So there are sometimes will be males in the home or males present in the community, but not men. So we're taught in the Nation of Islam that man, particularly the Black man, is God, and God is one possessing power and force. A lot of our young men are attracted to power or what is perceived to be power.
Yeah.
Right. So when we talk about this false sense or this false veil of violence, you know, those firearms, that drill rack, these are things that you see when you see people getting it, or, you know, having money, having huge wads of cash. False veil of violence. Okay. That tends to signify to them what power is, or some false sense of identity that they can glom onto because a real man or a real father wasn't present. So I guess what, as a follow-up question, what may be the difference between, you know, just a male and a man, and how is the presence of how has that definition kind of been lost in today's society, at least in our community?
So for me personally, I think that, you know, and I try not to make it like I'm being disrespectful when I say this, right? But one thing is, just as far as a male, right?
Right.
Someone who has not taken the time to grow themselves, they have physically grown, right? But they are still, in a way, an adult child. That's just a male that you see out here, right? Because if you're not learning and regrouping from the lessons that you've had, things that you've even seen other people go through, in order for you to grow, then what exactly does that transition to manhood look like? And I think that because, you know, it's not a tangible thing, it's not anything that, you know, once you get to this certain age, you'll look this certain way and now you're a man, you know what I mean? It's not a tangible thing. So I think that for some brothers, what's happening is, you know, we got that at 18, you're an adult, right?
Right.
So they just kind of lead with that, right? And leave all of what it is that they grew up kind of seeing, being a part of. They never really mold themselves from the lessons learned, or not actually seeking out some type of, you know, older brother, elder, to teach them further, right? It's like, I want to say maybe an ego and an arrogance in a way that somehow is not allowing them to make that next step, right? I've had conversations where, you know, it's brothers that's like, oh, well, as far as even fatherhood, I'm not really sure what to do. And my next question is, do you know any good fathers? Do you know one? Because you can go to that brother and ask him, you know, and say the same thing that you're saying to me to him, and ask him how you can be that. You don't necessarily have to have that person in your life, but as long as you are seeking that, right? That's the difference between a male and a man. Someone who actually, a man is going to have values, be set in his values, and he's going to grow through those values, right? But a male, I feel like in our community, is someone who is okay with being stagnant, not necessarily looking for what's going to grow them. They're doing what's comfortable. And for all of us, men and women, we have to get out of that. Doing what's comfortable is not going to bring us forward. It's not going to propel us and lift us up. Okay, so we got to get rid of the comfortabilities out here in order to grow our children, our future generation, the generations that are going to take care of us when we can barely take care of us. And right now, that's not really looking good, in my honest opinion.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for that. As you were talking, and you mentioned, as a male, as an aspiring man, seeking out one who has done it or is doing it or in that same struggle for guidance. You know, as an ego-starved population, Black men, we glom onto things like, you know, things that look shiny, you know, any type of status symbol to make us feel good about ourselves in a place, a society, in a world where we have become, as Dr. Wesley said, not the alpha male, but the epsilon male, right? Not even the beta male, right? Going even further down to where we look for anything that makes us feel good about ourselves, whether it be intrinsic or external. I want to bounce over to Dontay, and I'm heading right over to Brother Lamond. Dontay, in the FOI, we're taught that men sharpen men like steel sharpens steel. How does that relate to what Sister Zuna just spoke about in her answer, talking about the male and the man?
Right. Well, also, we're taught that the man is the backbone of the nation, right? So, you can't really, a nation can rise no higher than its woman, because the woman sets the standard for the nation. But the man is the backbone of the nation. So what does that mean? It makes the nation stand erect. It makes the nation stand up. It makes the nation not being dependent on another nation or another people. So the man is the one who makes things move in the nation, to make sure that we have everything that we need to have. He provides security, he provides protection, he provides sustenance, and this isn't just in a physical sense, but it's also spiritually, morally, etc. So when we're talking about men sharpening men inside of our communities, one thing about men, especially Black men, like you mentioned earlier, Brother Jabril, is that ego part, right? So I know with me, I have I had to get control of it over time, and I still have a problem with it. But like for me, my ego can be really big sometimes. So it's very sometimes it can be difficult to go to someone else and ask you, hey, how did you do that? Hey, what was the process that you did to get here? Or what were some of the things that you encountered? What are some things that, you can tell me to help me out? This is what I'm going through, etc. And that whole going to a man or going to, another male and asking them for that help, sometimes that can be very hard for us to do. Because, we don't want to feel like we're weak, or we don't want to feel like, we're lacking in some areas. But like Sister Zuna was saying, this is all a part of the growth process. This is all a part of elevating yourself and growing yourself, because you can't do it by yourself, right? You can't learn everything by yourself. You have to rely on, other people in different areas to fill in those gaps where you're weak at. So I remember in one of my old jobs, I was talking to my coworkers, and he was like, yeah, one of my professors said something interesting. He was like, know your strengths and know your weaknesses, but you don't really have to focus on trying to strengthen your weaknesses. You just gather a team that is able to fill in your weaknesses for you. And that's what a nation does, right? Minister Farrakhan introduced the non-ministries a couple of years back. And, non-ministries are these ministries, science and technology, communications, etc., that all tie in together. So not one person has to be in 9 different things. Like, that doesn't make sense. See what I'm saying? If you're good at this, I'm good at that, and he's good at that, and he's good at this, as long as we can come under a common goal or common understanding, then we can all work together to fill in the other's weaknesses, and we can be a full body at that point. So, and I just really want to quickly tie this back into atonement and reconciliation. It's going to be difficult for us to come together and cover each other's weaknesses when we have problems with each other. You see what I'm saying? If I have a problem with you, you see what I'm saying, then that's something that's hindering me from going and figuring out how you can help me out or how I can help you out, because me and you have an issue, or me and someone else, has this problem. We haven't reconciled it. We haven't come to a common agreement or common understanding. So now I'm hindering my own development because because I have an issue with you. That's hindering me from coming to you and asking you for help, or that's hindering me from asking you how I can grow from the knowledge that you have. You see what I'm saying? So it all really ties in, but we need each other. I think that's the overall point, right? Especially when it comes to men, we need each other. And if we're not willing to lean on another person to cover our weaknesses, then we'll just kind of be out there. And that's not good for anybody.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Brother Dontay. Brother Lamond, I'm coming right to you. I had to say this point because going back again, the topic, the valence of violence, I think we really just unpacked another valence. Ego starved, there's a valence of pride, right? So now, and a valence is not necessarily always false. It could be true, but it's never really constructive, right? So we're talking about this identity now is me as a prideful person. I can't come to you because that means I'm lessening, or I'm less of a man, or I'm less of a person because I can't take care of X, Y, and Z. But to be a true human being, a true mammal, is to be one who thrives in interdependent living, right? So I'm not, as they talk about in the animal kingdom, like the lion is more of the natural cat than the tiger. If you look at most cats in the animal kingdom, they travel in groups. The tiger travels by himself. You know what I'm saying? That gets what it needs to get done. But we as people, as Black people in particular, right? We find that we're not only at our happiest, we're most productive when we're kind of working, doing what we do well and working with other people to do well, to do something even greater than ourselves. So that balance of pride, that balance of violence, right? That comes from the ego starvation, that comes from the need for power, whether we understand what true power is or not, can really become destructive and create this reality that we have seen, right? So that was awesome. So now coming right to Brother Lamond on that same vein, you know, we want to talk a little bit about prison. And Brother Lamond, how and when did a prison stay become a hallmark for manhood among urban youth?
Well, that's an excellent question, beloved brother. But I want to look at the question and break it down like this. I think from our vantage point, once there were certain terms thrown out in the atmosphere to how to identify with a Black male by the ideology of white supremacy, which Bill and Hillary Clinton coined this phrase that Black men were super predators. So once you can turn us into a full-fledged savage, and the most honorable Elijah Muhammad said that a savage is a person that has lost the knowledge of himself and is living a beast's life. So once you degrade the Black man all the way down and reduce him to nothing and neutralize his masculinity, then there must be a systematic way now that you control him. So the next thing that you must do is you must set up a prison industrial complex. And once the prison industrial complex became marketable on the stock market, then they found a systematic way to benefit off the Black man's victimization. And the scholar, Dr. Amos Wilson, in his book, Black on Black Violence, he talks about a section in there about the Black criminal. And in that section, he identifies 3 components that help these young men, because these young men didn't begin to glamorize prison in a vacuum. They were led this way by their own emptiness and victimization. But Dr. Amos Wilson talks about these 3 terms, and he calls them victimization, alienation, and self-condemnation. So when you are affiliated with all 3 of those components and you are reduced to nothing, and everywhere you look at, your masculinity is neutralized, then you don't have an example. As Sister Camille talked about, there's no example of a male in the home. All of the men that you know are either incarcerated or dead. So now you're looking for an image of a Black man, and all of our leaders that have stood up and represented manhood to us, the enemy of God have found some way to systematically annihilate them or assassinate them. So you really don't want to emulate a Malcolm X. You really don't want to emulate a Martin Luther King. You don't want to emulate Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, because in your mind, strong manhood and strong leadership results in death. So now, because you have those components of victimization, alienation, and self-condemnation, and you've been made a full-fledged savage, now you're looking for a way to glamorize what you have been reduced to. And that's why our young men love so much to kill, because what they are really killing is the emptiness and the victimization that they are hiding as a valence within inside themselves. So it's easy to kill another man if you're empty inside. If you're already dead physically, mentally, and spiritually, then it's almost like you get a sense of validation by pulling the trigger and killing your brother, which ultimately you know is going to make you end up in the prison industrial complex. And if you're walking around here without an aim or without a purpose, then you naturally glamorize what you have been reduced to, and that's a savage beast. And once you're reduced to a savage beast, the only place for a beast to be in is in a cage.
Listen, listen, you're talking about straight and to the point. That's years and years and years of practice, family. All praises to Allah. Family, I'm getting charged up. I was telling people before, I've had the Million Man March on constant blast all day. So I was charged up coming into tonight's session. But family, audience members, please submit questions. As you know, this is a wonderfully awesome panel. Brother Lamond just broke it down. Talk about glamorizing what you've been reduced to, right? That stuck with me so hard because I think about when you see, or rap videos or like of the past, and even currently, where you have a lot of our young brothers maybe armed up or wearing whatever they're wearing, but glamorizing or repping a certain corner or street. Now, in a sense, it's cool to be proud of something that you have or that you own, but it's kind of insane to rep and have so much pride about somewhere you rent or somewhere that you don't have any real basis of security. So I kind of liken that to what brother was saying. Right. When you think about you're relegated to a certain condition, and you know what? But I'm gonna be the biggest fish in this dirty behind pond, though. You know what I'm saying? You can dang near breathe in the pond. Ain't no food in there. It's dirty. You dirty. But you know what? I'm the biggest fish here. So I'm just gonna keep moving and be the biggest dirty fish. You know what I'm saying? So that valence that's really impressed on you, because now that's the only thing you can be best at in this reduced state, then begins to perpetuate. So then the young brothers in the community, young sisters, like, oh, okay, this is what they see, what they grow up in. So you're the OG living it up in that reality. So now I'm gonna try to be like that, as opposed to, like Sister Zuna was saying earlier, the comfortabilities or the stagnation, knowing that there's more beyond this pond. If you look over the hill, there's a clean lake you can swim in. Right. Now there's bigger fish. There's fish that got families. There's fish that live in certain areas of the lake and protect one another. You come up in there trying to impose yourself and you get shut down as the new fish on the block, and now you lip and bleed a little bit on the side, like, oh my God, like, yeah, because this is how life really supposed to be lived. You can't just let nonsense come into your community, and because you got some valence or some identity that you big stuff in this destructive reality, but you see a real constructive reality you don't fit in, right? So thank you so much, Brother Lamond, for that. I want to swing back to Sister Jasmine very quickly. Do sisters have any responsibility when it comes to this glorification of a prison stay? And if so, what is it in relation to, or in you all's relation to the brothers?
Yes, sir. That's an excellent question. I think that sisters absolutely have a responsibility in the grand scheme of this conversation, and not perpetuating this cycle of their men going to prison, even though it's not an accident. Mass incarceration is not an accident. The fact that 1 in 3 Black males will have some type of encounter with jail or prison in their lifetime is not an accident. But at the same time, how do we respond to that, right? How do we respond to a situation that's kind of been crafted for us, or a situation that we've been put in? And I just feel as if as women, and just thinking about how I want to word this carefully.
Take your time.
Yes, sir. Just think about how I want to word this carefully. But I feel as if as women, we have to be careful with how we have to protect our brothers, right? Even though they're there to protect us, being so quick to call the police on our brothers, sometimes in spite, sometimes in a sense of, even though there may be a situation where we are in harm, but there are situations where we're quick to kind of give our brothers over to law enforcement or to the law because we've been hurt or because we're upset. And it kind of perpetuates that cycle of them kind of being wrapped up in that system because we're not adequately understanding that we're on the same team a lot of the time. So when you asked me that question, I automatically kind of thought about that. You know what I mean? But again, mass incarceration it's not an accident, and there's a lot of levels to how, this has kind of been painted for us. We've always been seen as criminals in this country, right? The goal has been for African Americans or Black people to be seen as criminals, right? Harriet Tubman was a criminal. You know what I mean? Like,
not to me.
She let her people out of slavery, but at that time, even though we revere her now and history reveres her now, she was at one time a criminal. You know, Martin Luther King, who we all love now, right? His phone was tapped at one point. Why was his phone tapped? Because at one point the government saw him as a criminal. So when we talk about the valence or this identity that we've been given this identity as criminals, you know, and just want to make a point about, you know, going back to what Brother Lamond was saying, that was so powerful when you talk about the glamorization of being a criminal. And a lot of the ways that get us is through music. When we think about the music industry, and we don't run the music industry, but when we think about the music industry, it's almost a brainwashing of us. And keep me honest here, but if I quote the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan correctly, what he said, the power of a song and the lyrics of a song over 1,000 lectures, I think he said, and correct me if I'm wrong. You know, there's so much power in the music that we listen to today. And we don't realize how we internalize that into our culture, into the culture that we have of violence. And that's even even me saying that the culture, for me to even say that we have a culture of violence. Right. You know what I mean? That's something that was, when we talk about valence, was given to us. You know what I mean? Like, to even say that's our culture, because that's not really our culture, you know, but that's how it's painted. So to answer your question, yes, sir.
Thank you so much, Queen. You said, again, so much in that too. I try to keep everything that people say in my head, but you talked about culture, right? And we know that culture is the number one, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Come on, brain. Not impact, but it'll come back to me.
Influence?
Yes. Oh my God. So, culture is probably the number one or top influence on one's identity. What I call myself, how I see myself, how I see those around me, by the culture I'm around. And that culture can be a valence. We talk about gangster rap and rap in the 90s, even a little bit before that, right? A lot of us, we rapped about what happened to us. So we couldn't get but so mad at people because it was because literally what happened to us when the consciousness came, Nation of Islam, the Wu-Tang, a lot of these things kind of went into the rap as well. So that was our reality. So, and you talk to rappers today, a lot of rappers are skilled and could rap about things, quote unquote, conscious, but that's not what sells. So again, they take on the valence of that which is what makes the money, right? That which will sell, that which people seem to glom into or seem to consume most readily, thereby paying their bills and taking care of their families. A slight tangent. It's connected, but it's not. There was this shirt I had seen, and there's been a conversation going around on social media. You mentioned Harriet Tubman and other ancestors, where it was a shirt that said, like dear white people, we are not our grandparents, we will F you up. Or like the whole thing about we are not our ancestors. And I had to catch myself because I had laughed at the initial shirt, like we are not our grandparents, we were like, yeah, we tough, but who are we talking about? And this valence that we take on ourselves, that our grandparents or our ancestors was chumps, or they wouldn't stand up, or because of the things that happened, oh, I wouldn't take that. Well, we say that today, but we haven't gone through nothing. Last time I checked, I never had a fire hose put on me. I never seen nobody in real life have a fire. You ever seen a fire hose and how much water pressure comes out of that? That hurts. You know what I'm saying? Dogs sick on you. So we have to be mindful when we put people in boxes, or we say what we would or we wouldn't do, or who we are and who we are not. Because I don't know about anybody else, but I choose to identify with the ancestors that I know that are the reason why I'm here today. I can call myself Muslim. I can have the name Jabril Sadiq Muhammad, right? That's the valence that I'm going to take on. You know what I'm saying? That's constructive. That's my identity. That denotes or connotes my function in life. So I just wanted to say that very quickly. So couple shout outs, family. Thank you so much for those listening and watching. We want to give a shout out to brother, I think this is brother Ikemba Bomani Ojore. Hopefully I said that right. If I did, praise be to Allah. If I didn't, sorry about that. We have a question. Give me a second, another question. How do we end violence among ourselves without first gaining knowledge of self and ending our relationship with the colonizer? We are in a violent relationship where we have not been able to exercise the power to counter the violence committed against us every day. So we take it out on each other. I'm gonna say that one more time. How do we end violence among ourselves without first gaining knowledge of self and ending our relationship with the colonizer? We are in a violent relationship where we have not been able to exercise the power to counter the violence committed against us every day. So we take it out on each other. And this is open to the floor, so anybody can take this up.
I wanted to briefly touch on it. That's an interesting question. But you know, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said that if you focus on the positive, you automatically take care of the negative. And you know, I don't know how that sounds to people, but to me, you know, that's a very powerful statement, because even in the question, the ending part of the question was, we take it out on each other. Well, if we're taking it out on each other, that means that we're not focused on each other to begin with. We're focused on something else. Because we're focused on something else and we're becoming frustrated with that something else, we then take that out on what's right next to us, and that's our brother. So when you don't worry about what's over there, right? And when you begin to focus your mind on what's right here in front of me, what's right here next to me, what can I do to change my reality, to change my immediate reality without focusing on somebody else to solve it for you? Once we start looking inside instead of outside, I think we'll become a little bit more conscious about how we're treating each other, because the source of a lot of our frustration and a lot of our anger is because we're not getting what it is that we've constantly been asking for. Well, if we're not getting what we've constantly been asking for, and we've constantly been asking for it, wouldn't common sense say, well, hey, maybe we should do this thing a little bit differently? What didn't we do yet? You see what I'm saying? What's another solution to this thing? Because we've been approaching it in one way this entire time, and that way hasn't been working. So what haven't we been doing? And what we haven't been doing is that we haven't been focusing on self. We haven't been focusing on developing our communities. We haven't been focusing on developing our character and our relationships to one another. So because we haven't been doing that, you see what I'm saying, and our mind is somewhere else, we lash out on each other. To just briefly answer the question, I think once we start looking on the inside and putting all of our energy into focusing on what's in front of us, focusing on what's around us, and using the energy that we're taking and we're looking on the outside, if we take the same energy, put it on the inside, I think we'll see a big shift and a big change in how we're treating one another.
Thank you so much, Brother Dante. Brother Gabe, yes, coming right to you, sir.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, you raised a very important point earlier when you mentioned, you know, in the Nation of Islam, you know, you're taught that Black man is God. When you remove the godhood from a person, that person's going to replace that with something else. And sadly, for many of us, we replaced it with the devil.
Come on.
And according to my teachings, you know, there's a reason why the Nation of Islam became so attractive from 1930 on. Nation of Gods and Earths, the new African movements, because Black people found themselves saying, wait a minute, something's up here. I've been told a lie about who I am and who my people are. And so when you understand the higher connection with the cosmos that we are as a people, it becomes tougher and tougher and tougher to want to kill God.
Teach.
You understand me?
Yes.
So being able to understand that reality it's part of the reason why rites of passage programs are still one of the most pivotal things that we can do as people. It's being able to say to ourselves, we must deprogram and demystify for our children, both boys and girls, this 24-hour torture trap that's trying to lead them into the wrong direction. Rites of Passage provides them with guidance, provides them a knowledge of self, a thorough knowledge of self. It provides them with a healthy reflection of themselves. And as they grow through it and then nurtured by it, if it's correct, as they become adults, as the scripture says, they will not go away from it. And so I think those are some of the things that we should do. And I agree with our good brother Akemba. And maybe that should be a strategy and part of our ongoing solution, to think about how can we, put that sense of raw essence spirituality back into our teaching, and our engagement with our brothers, right? And our engagement with our brothers has to be on a deeper level.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. See, you want to play devil's advocate, but there's a separation of church and state, right?
Yes, sir.
So
Yes, sir.
Now we have the conversation of, you want to teach our babies and you want to have them see, because you can't have God in the school if I'm just to be another cog in society. Because once God or God in his reality, and his reality as it relates to not only man but black children and black boys and girls, I have a hard time just thinking that I'm just going to go get a job and fit in, right? See, now I'm like, well, I could own something, or you know what? Let me see what those who look like me are doing, right? So now a new identity comes in, the valence of me as just a worker bee, or just someone who's going to collect a paycheck. I can do that, but I'm going to have a hard time with life, and I might not even do well in that capacity because I'm always thinking about something else. It doesn't sit well with me. I'm comfortable yet uncomfortable. So I live in this constant reality where I'm trying to find who I really am. And I know that who I currently am doesn't sit well with me. So thank you so much, Brother Gabe, for bringing up that spiritual context as it pertains to our identity, and how we're really to take up a new identity. So thank you, sir. Sister Jasmine.
Yes, sir. That was an excellent point. Just to think about the Black man as being a god, because what is a god? God is one that, wields power and force. So as a man or even a woman, in being a god, we're looking to, particularly as a man, wield power and force. And a lot of the time, we're assigning power to the ability to take someone's life now, rather than assigning power to being a good father or being a good husband or leading your family or providing for your family. So this idea of what is our power, and if we've been reduced,
yes,
like Brother Lamond was saying, reduced to only having the power to take someone else's life because we've been taking power away from us in all other aspects, then that's what results in the violence that we see today. And I also just want to point out, just another quick point. It comes down to, like you kind of touched on a little bit, Brother Jabril, the educational system. And I think it was in the last session, Sister Zuna had we were talking about education, and she had said that the educational system, I'm paraphrasing, correct me if I'm wrong, is not one that teaches our children to be critical thinkers, to think for themselves. It just creates us to be robots, to follow instructions. And so in being kind of raised in that type of environment, we're now growing up into this herd mentality to where we're doing things because everyone else is doing them, instead of being able to consciously say, I'm going to go against the grain in order to stop, the perpetual violence that I see. So, yes, sir.
Thank you so much. I gotta give a shout out to when you said, well, we were all clapping on snapping too. Oh, where we place power, right? So how we identify with power, shooting somebody down versus being a good father, being a good human being, being a builder versus destroyer. In the Nation of Gods of Earth say you either build or you destroy, right? So that understanding the true definition of power, right, and we understand that we talk about relationships, right? And we talk about our women or women in general are attracted to power. But a lot of times, women intrinsically know that what power really is, which is why y'all get frustrated with us when we don't exemplify it. It's not just us, you getting money spent on you or time. It's like, Black man, what are you doing? You know what I'm saying? What are you bringing into reality? Not just for me, but that what are you doing to be productive? So yeah, you can be nice looking, you can do nice things for me, but at a certain point, something's missing. And whether y'all can put your finger on it or not, you know intrinsically he's not doing enough. And which is why we may get into arguments or have little squabbles as couples, just because you are striving, we want more out of each other. And that's okay, because the God is constantly evolving. So why shouldn't we? Sister Zuna or Brother Lamond, any extra points before we go to our next question? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just if you can, I didn't hear the question from the brother.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Give me a quick second, beloved. So I'm gonna read. The question is pretty short, but it's a whole paragraph. So I'm gonna read it slowly. He says, "How do we end violence among ourselves without first gaining knowledge of self and ending our relationship with the colonizer?" That's the question. Then he goes on to say, "We are in a violent relationship where we have not been able to exercise the power to counter the violence committed against us every day. So we take it out on each other."
Well, I say this, and that when I elaborated to it earlier, when you empty inside, when there's this void inside, you have to find a way to fill that void. And unfortunately, our masculinity as Aboriginal men or as alpha males has been neutralized in a society that's dominated by white supremacy. So we talked about it in the prelude leading up to this, that environment is stronger than heredity. So the only way that we can escape the violence that we are entrenched in, or the violence that has become a learned behavior over this 6,000 year period. Because if you trace our origin in our original civilization, which they call Africa, which the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said at one time it was all called Asia, you don't find no history of us killing each other in the manner that we kill each other today. We didn't even kill each other like this on the plantation when they worked us from can't see morning to can't see night. So separation has to enter the equation, like you said, because if environment is more powerful than heredity, as long as you are in an environment that's dominated by white supremacy, by neocolonialism, racism, then it's only over a protracted period of time that those characteristics are going to come across your being. This country is like a womb. So whatever goes on inside the womb affects the life inside or outside the womb. So until we separate it, back to getting them 8 to 10 states with an outlet to the sea that are fertile and minerally rich, then we're going to continue to have these things. And then the real men have to take accountability and responsibility to go get your sons. Whether you and the mother have a relationship or not, you have a responsibility and a duty to go get that young king and raise him and teach him manhood. Because one thing that Ossie Davis said when he eulogized Malcolm X, he said Malcolm X was our living manhood. So there was something that they identified in Malcolm X that represented manhood. He was the image of that manhood as a student and follower of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. But again, I must say this, fathers, go get your sons. Try to establish a relationship that even if you and the mother don't get along, you have a seed that you brought into the universe. Go get your sons, go get your daughters, because a bitter child becomes a bitter adult. And a bitter adult winds up killing our engineer, our chemist, our future doctor, our future nurse. Because when you grow up bitter and cold because your father is not in your life, then you don't have no respect for Black men. and you want to disrespect or even annihilate the real men that you come in contact with. But it's impossible without separation and the knowledge of self. We won't be able to stop this disease or this virus of violence that's plaguing our community.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And you said it, you know, what I was thinking the whole time. The short of it is, you know, you don't stop the violence without knowledge of self. So it's impossible, right? You know, you when you don't know who you are susceptible to who someone else says you are, right? And the more that that's repeated over the airwaves, face to face, in your daily dealings, the more you begin to identify with it, thereby taking on that valence, which going back to the title for today, right? The valence of violence, right? A false veil, a false veil giving a destructive reality, right? So with that, I saw Brother Gabe with his hand up. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, based on what you just said, and it kind of goes back to what Lamond also was just saying, and what Sister Camille, Sister Zuna opened us up with. And I want to give a few names, and let me know if these names sound familiar to you. They're men who lived, one could say, in our history. Fred Sanford, George Jefferson, James Jefferson, Heathcliff Huxtable, Uncle Phil.
Come on.
Carl Winslow.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And see, even for as much as we could say that there was a joke with George, he loved the heck out of Lionel.
Come on.
Don't mess with Lionel because he will come at you. For as much as we laughed at Fred Sanford, he loved the heck out of his son Lamont. And we saw that level of love between father and son and the power of images throughout our lives. It nurtured us. For some of us, it taught us in the same ways that some of us watched A Different World and watched School Days and wanted to go to an HBCU. These images of fathers wanted some of us to be fathers. In the same way that some of us went to the Million Man March October 16, 1995, and saw 2 million black men and said, you know what, I need to come home and atone and reflect and be responsible.
That's right.
Imagery is powerful, family. And it has a real specific power on changing whatever we've been taught. You know, they say you can't teach an old dog no tricks. Well, to a certain extent. But if you give somebody a life-changing opportunity, an epiphany can still happen. And we have to look at the fact that some of those images have been lost. You know what I mean? Some of those images that perhaps some of us grew up on aren't as readily available on their TV screens, on their devices, on their YouTubes, on their, laptops in the morning or in the evening. And so what do we do to replace those images so that they can have a vibrant sense of self in that relationship between fatherhood and these sons?
Thank you so much, sir. A couple of quick shout outs, family. Thank you, Sister Daisy Muhammad, for tuning in. Brother Enrico X, thank you for tuning in. A quick comment from, again, Brother, from Sister Kimba. She said, I need all of you to come to my school and have this conversation. This is powerful. You are all impactful. Thank you for your energy. Praise be to Allah. Thank you as well. From Rashad Bey, he said, whoever spoke about Dr. Amos Wilson and the marketability of prisons was right on point. Thank you, Brother Lamond, again, for that point. Beloved Brother Gabriel, I wanted to say something to what you just said, which was very powerful. You talked about those fathers from our, TV history, right? But represented real fathers. Like, I have a father, right, who exemplified a lot of the things they did, talking to me. My father's big or was big, and we're out of the house now. Family dinner. When my mother cooked at home. We cooked at home. We sat around. And my brother and I were homeschooled. But even when I went to high school, I came back to a home cooked meal. How was your day? You have homework. What's going on? We talked about the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and he and my mother kept involved with what was going on in our lives. We wasn't no real secrets there that, unless I had a couple things maybe I didn't want them to know, but generally speaking, they knew about our lives. But just like there's power in imagery, there's power in language. You said you can't teach an old dog new tricks. When we remember that we're not dogs, right? So to your point, right? So just in being funny, right? You know, maybe you can't, but you can teach a man some new thing.
Come on,
right?
come on.
So the same thing with like things like nicknames, and even when in the nation we're taught we don't call our children kids, right? So all those things like that, when you talk about language presents images the same way actual images do. So I just wanted to poke a little fun at you, and when I said that, praise be to Allah. So another shout out to Brother George X. I love everybody in the comments. We real lit today, family. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. Thank y'all for the audience members. This doesn't happen without y'all as we advance the discussion. So as we continue on to our next question for Brother Gabriel. So we've had a lot of discussion, right? We talked about the valence, right? The concept of valence, false or true identity, the various identities, our understanding of what power is, the lack of fathers in the home, that effect. We talked about the prison stay as a hallmark of manhood. We see all of us, again, different walks of life for one common cause, striving to be productive in society and do something different to really push not only ourselves, but our families forward. So in your humble opinion, and based on what you've seen in your experience, has violence conquered the Black community? In what ways has violence been normalized? What guidance would you give someone to provide hope in a non-violent future?
Yeah, it's funny, you know, the answer is again a great question. The answer for me is the power of language. So right now I'm on a panel with the brilliant engineer, with Answer the Bell, with Lincoln University, Temple University, with another engineer. We all breathing breath in our lungs. We had a phenomenal opening from our dear beloved brother. I don't think any of us are conquered.
Come on.
There are people in the street right now who are planning for engaging community tomorrow. They are perhaps at the North Philly Peace Park preparing for a marketplace tomorrow afternoon from 2 to 6 p.m. Maybe they're preparing for a march that got postponed today from a rain for Sunday around anti-violence. Those are not the actions of a conquered people. Those are the actions of a people who are seeking to be victorious over the harm that has been spilled against us. I think the true conquering will be once we have been so self-defeated and so destroyed that there is no activity. And one thing is for sure, two things for certain, across the country, there are still a lot of activity working to combat it, from coaches to jegnas to tutors to people who are taking the place, father figures, mother figures, caregivers, guardians. So I think that we've been severely harmed. So I don't want to minimize the harm that we're talking about tonight, because we've seen a rampant uptick in violence, not only in Philadelphia, but across the country, Chicago, Baltimore, you name it, New York City, DC. But I think the conquering comes when we can show and prove to ourselves that, have we given it all? And I think for many of us watching, the Kimbers of the world, they're asking the question, how can I actually conquer this beast? Has it been normalized? I think it has been normalized for a number of reasons. One, we talked about media, talked about music. I came up in the era of music where it was just as violent, if not more violent, than music of today. And I think that we got to also get out of the whole statement of, well, I listened to it and I made out okay.
Come on.
You didn't make out okay. Not only did you not make it out okay, I did that because you made it out okay is enough for everybody else is anti-human as a perspective. Because everybody's different. Everybody responds to trauma and stimulation differently. So we got to get out of that nonsense. But then also, I'll close by saying this, in the city of Philadelphia, according to the police department, as of last month, they had a 47% clearance rate of homicides. For those that are not familiar with the term clearance rate, that means that 47% of the homicides have been solved, which for me tells me actually that there's a whole lot that hasn't been solved.
Come on.
So what happens is that we have a lot of families that are hurting. Basically, almost half of our families are dealing with situations where we've lost loved ones and never found out who the shooter was, never found out who the murderer was. And so talk about normalization, it comes from the sense of, wow, something happened to my brother, my son, my daughter, my niece, and nobody's ever going to find out about it. And it's going to be 20 down the line. I'm still going to be marching with Mothers in Charge and marching with Cure Violence and everybody else doing great work, but I'm never going to have closure. And so I think it brings me to your third point, or all your points, which is the question of healing. We need a collective healing as a community, because for many of us, we have not found a sense of closure to all the issues that are so pertinent in our community. And particularly this question of violence. I mean, it's a violation, right? Like, I'm not sure if anybody ever felt violated and somebody did something to you, but didn't say, I'm sorry, didn't say, I feel bad about it, didn't say my bad, didn't say pardon me, stuck all over your stilettos, all over your shiny wingtips, or bumped into you, or hurt you at work, microaggression, bumped into your car, punched you, jumped you, it increases. To not have closure or healing from a violation is just the ultimate sense of how things get normalized into the conquering. And so I think that's what we need to do, is figure out ways, and there are ways. We have Answer the Bell right now on the panel. Please contact our sister Zuna for Answer the Bell. If you're feeling traumatized by certain instances in your life, contact our dear sister. But more importantly, think about the ways that institutionally and structurally, that's what's going to take. Individual work helps, but structure's got to be, take over. Those are the things that we got to do. And I'll close by saying this: there are cities and states in America that have less murders than we do here in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania has the fifth highest homicides as a state of all 50 states, right? 784 homicides in 2018. The lion's share of those homicides come out of the city of Philadelphia, second being Pittsburgh. States like Maine, I said state, I didn't say city, I didn't say town. State of Maine had 24 homicides for the whole year.
Wow.
24. A state like New Hampshire had 21 homicides for the whole year. We had 21 homicides last month. So in other words, what I'm saying is that we have to think possibility. Now, what makes those states, those cities, possible to have these reductions in homicides? Is it resources? We're gonna keep coming back to that poverty question, because I could show you 1,000,001 cities around the world, whether you're in a poverty-stricken city in Indonesia, a poverty-stricken city in Russia, a poverty-stricken city in Afghanistan, a poverty-stricken city in Brazil, a poverty-stricken city in Turkey, you're going to find violence. Because what happens is it forces people to have to scrap for the means to have their basic needs met: food, clothing, and shelter. So we have to be able to produce those things for our family in order to get ourselves out of this situation. That's going to take building Black power. That's going to take building Black knowledge of self. That's going to take building Black energy. It's going to take building Black infrastructure. And it's going to involve building a sense of a Black community agreement, which we don't tend to touch on, but we're going to need some serious community agreements as far as how we deal with the structure. We need to be, I know right now we're saying around the way, you got to be on code, right? People are hearing that language a lot nowadays.
Yes, sir.
But it's a community agreement. It's saying this is the village. It's saying we don't want to put you in jail, brother or sister. So what can we do to help you in order so that we don't find you locked up and your child never sees you again?
Right.
I didn't say kid, brother Jabril, I said child.
Yes, sir.
Right? And so those are just some of the things, man. But I think it's going to come down to us being able to access and attain power. I think it's going to come down to a point where, at a certain point, our demands are going to have to become commands, and it's going to have to come to a point, as I close, that as long as we figure out a way to, persevere, keep fighting. Rasheed Wallace and Steve Jackson had an event today at Grass High School. It got rained out, so they postponed it. But they had a big event today that was playing at Grass High School today, dealing with violence in the youth. Stephen Jackson and Rasheed Wallace,
right.
Former NBA players. So we're not conquered yet. We're still in the fight. And I think the hope would be that it's possible. And think about it like this, man. Many of our ancestors although they may have dreamed it, many of them didn't think chattel slavery would ever end. They didn't think that.
Right.
Why would you think it in 1798, right? Why would you think in 1824? You might think it, but if your grandfather, grandmama was put in slavery and all you kept seeing was changed, we talk about a lot about 460 years, right? So that's a lot of years, family.
Right.
We're talking about hundreds of years, all you saw was enslavement in your lineage. Many of our ancestors fought to get free. But some of them also said, is it ever gonna change? Is it ever gonna change? And some had the fortitude to say, yes, it is. Some of them had the fortitude to say, yes, it is. Some of them had the fortitude. And imagine if somebody would have told, to Brother Lamond's point, you know, Brother Marcus Garvey, you got a good idea. You got a good idea, young man. 4 million organizers in your organization? That's not gonna happen. Imagine if somebody spoke to, you know, Honorable Minister Dontay Muhammad. Good idea, brother. I know you want to build the nation, but we too messed up out here, brother.
Right.
That didn't happen.
Right.
The Father Allah. Well, you know, the Father Allah, you got this science, you know, sounds good. Brothers call themselves God, though. I don't know about, no.
Right.
Every iteration, we understood that at the core of ourselves is a core and a source of victory and overcoming.
Right.
And so I think that we have to always take that spirit of overcoming because we have the original. The original is going to be here.
Right.
We just got to tap into that original essence and make sure that we're always going to be here. So I'll close with that. Thank you, though.
Thank you so much. He said tap into that original essence, right? You're not black because you're cursed. You're black because you're first, right? Praise be to Allah. So you brought up some more valences. We talked about what? Valence of hopelessness, the valence of slavehood, right? Or I am a slave. There's a difference between a slave and a captive, right? Someone who's a captive is free here, just not free here. Someone who's a slave is not only enslaved here, but enslaved here. So you can leave them and have them not move or not even try to escape. And on top of that, tell on people who are trying to leave, right? So that valence had to be overcome for some who never had it, but overcome for those who never have it to see, you know what, can it be different? Can it change? Can I be free? But my father, my grandfather, they all were slaves, but what makes me different? I can truly dream about something else. I can aspire to be something that's not a slave. Yes, sir. Because God doesn't make slaves, right? And as they said, I think it was in Roots, the white man who was I forget what it was called, but like he was in charge of breaking the captives they would get. He said slaves aren't born, slaves are made. So when you're talking about any identity, right? You have your intrinsic identity as we're talking about and things that are given to you. How are you going to tell people who are kings and queens and came from being autonomous and doing for self, and then all of a sudden you eating all these bad foods and master this, master that, and having your families broken up overnight? No, that's a process. You have to be made that way. Going back to the valence for destructive reality. So thank you so much. Dontay, did you have something you wanted to add? I felt like you had some ants in your pants over there.
Not all the way, but I did want to briefly mention this the concept of healing. I think that's something that we as a people collectively don't really think about too much. And you know, I really wanted to just touch on this because, you know, we're talking about the 25th anniversary of the Million Man March, and in 1995, after the minister called it, it was dubbed as the Holy Day of Atonement, October 16th of every single year. And I just want to read something from the Jewish tradition, what their Holy Day of Atonement means, is Yom Kippur. But it's also known as the Day of Atonement. It's the holiest day in the year in Judaism. Its central themes are atonement and repentance. Jews traditionally observe this holy day with a long day fast and intensive prayer, often spending most of the day in synagogue services. And then when you go down to the etymology, Yom means day in Hebrew, and then Kippur is the root word for atone, to atone.
Right.
And then I'm just going to read this excerpt here too. Yom Kippur is the 10th day of the 7th month and is known as the Sabbath of the Sabbath. Rosh Hashanah, which is the Jewish New Year, is the first day of the month according to the Hebrew calendar. And on this day, the forgiveness of sins is also asked of God. But Yom Kippur completes the annual period known in Judaism as the High Holy Day. So from the time of the Jewish New Year to the Day of Atonement, they say that, you know, God determines your fate for the next year, and it's sealed on the Holy Day of Atonement. So the purpose of the Holy Day is really to make amends, right? First is to make amends with God, and then it's to make amends with yourself, and then it's to make amends with other people. So when we're looking at, you know, what it means to atone, the minister, he outlined 8 steps of atonement. And I wanted to bring that up really quickly. And then the steps of atonement: 1, someone must point out the wrong. 2, there has to be an acknowledgement of the wrong. 3, to confess the fault first to God and then to those that are offended. 4, repentance, a feeling of remorse or contrition or shame for the past conduct which was wrong and sinful. 5, atonement, meaning to make amends and reparation for the wrong. 6, forgiveness by the offended party, to cease to feel offense and resentment against another for the harm done. 7, reconciliation and restoration, meaning to become friendly and peaceable again. 8, perfect union with God and with each other. So, you know, these steps, and we was looking at it, I think on Monday when we have FOI class, and we was talking about that first step. And that first step, the minister said, is always the hardest. Someone has to admit they're wrong, right?
Right.
A lot of times in our community, you know, we're so, and going back to this idea of like me, you know, I think in one of our workshops, we talked about that, where, you know, there's a lot of me type going on. And to be quite honest, when you're talking about a people and when you're talking about a nation, you can't be about, you know, just me, because the health of the nation and the health of the people is dependent upon how well you all work together. You see what I'm saying? I feel like I've been saying this like all day, but so obviously it must be on my mind. But you know, it's very true. You know, when you're talking about mending, and when you're talking about healing, and when you're talking about all these different things, it has to start with yourself and God first, and then it goes to other people. I think a lot of times in our community, you know, we have so much brokenness in us. Brother Gabe talked about that emptiness. We have so much emptiness in us, you know, we can't even begin to think about atoning with other people because we have so much that we have to deal with ourselves first. You see what I'm saying? And it's like, you know, that's why I keep talking about that whole focus on, you know, our community, focus on, you know, our families, focus on, like, you know, our environment, ourselves, because if we can't do that, then we can't then go beyond the self and then start healing our families. What are the problems that are plaguing my family right now? What are the problems that are plaguing my block right now? What are the problems that are plaguing this particular community right now, right? So we shouldn't be selfish in a form of, oh, I'm gonna get whatever I'm gonna get and forget everybody else. But we should definitely be self-centered in the form of, let me develop myself so that I can then go out and help develop other people. And you know, that's not an identity that's been given to us, right? If we're talking about these false identities, you know, a lot of the identity that's been given to us has been destructive identities. So, you know, we have images of, you know, one person, you know, gaining power by gaining money and respect, and, you know, he did this and he killed whoever he needed to kill in order to get to this position. And, you know, we have all these images. If you think about the show Power, right, that's all that show is about. All it's about is, you know, knocking people off here or doing this or doing that, doing the third, just so you can, you know, get more money, get more power, etc. And so, you know, it's like when those images are fed to us, like Sister Jasmine was saying earlier, through the music, like Brother Gabe was saying earlier, through the media, when those images are really given to us, we don't even have a thought of, wow, maybe I should reconcile some things within myself. maybe I should heal some things within me. Maybe I should mend some of the problems that I have going on, because these aren't images that are given to us. So I think, you know, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan did a very beautiful thing of giving us that image of 2 million men on the mall. Like that's unheard of, you know. And you know, you can't even get 50 people in a club without a fight breaking out or guns shooting or something like that. You know, he was blessed by God to call 1 million, and 2 million, almost 2 million showed up on the mall, and nothing but peace. Like, you see what I'm saying? So that's you know, that's heavy. That's very heavy, because if we can have millions of ourselves getting together in a peaceful area, in a peaceful scene, like what can that turn into? What can that be? What can our communities look like? You know, can you imagine a community in Philadelphia having no shootings for a year straight? Like that sounds crazy to us, right? Because we haven't been presented with that image. But that's what the Million Man March did. The Million Man March presented us with a peaceful image that we can really live together with each other in peace. All we have to do is reconcile and atone with ourselves and with each other.
Thank you. Go ahead. Yes, sir.
I got to jump on what Dontay said. First of all, that last part. First of all, everything he said was powerful. And everything that he said got my wheels turning. On the last point, there's an article that was published a couple of years ago, 2017. I think it was like February 2017, around there. I had to do research on it. They had a 1 year in Queensbridge houses in Queens, New York. Queensbridge of Nas, Mobb Deep, right? All these guys, you know what I mean? Capone Noriega went through a whole year of no homicides for the whole year. For the whole year. And I remember our brother here in Philadelphia, Brother Bilal Qayyum, came to me at a meeting. He said, Brother Gabe, Queensbridge had no homicides for the whole year. Like, what are they doing that we're not doing? And again, this isn't like 20 years ago, 30 years ago. This is 3 years ago. And so I think it gives us a sense of possibility as far as what resources do you put and invest in the community with those youth, which, to your earlier point about Yom Kippur, it reminds me of the yeshiva schools. And it reminds me of a couple of years ago when I was doing a program at South Philly High School, and I did a college access program. And it was a mixed group. You know, South Philly High School, for those that don't know, is a very multiracial school. And, you know, it's very Asian, it's very African-American, Black, it's very much, you get a little bit of everything. Anyway, I did the program during the day. In the evening, I'm having dinner. I'm near Chinatown, right in China City. I'm around like 9th and Vine. And I'm leaving. I see these 3 young men who I just saw in the class at like 10 that morning. And it's like 8 at night. And they got the same clothes and their book bag on. I'm like, hey, what's up, y'all? You know, good seeing y'all. You know, I'm walking back, getting ready to head home. Hey, what y'all doing? Like, I came from work. He said, nah, we finishing up school. I said, school? So what's going on? He said, yeah. Pointed to the building. Also was Asian letters on it.
Right.
Yeah, secondary school. Yeah. Mm-hmm. What is he telling me? He's telling me that from 8 a.m. to 3:30 p.m., yeah, South Philly High School. But guess what? From 4 p.m. to 7 p.m., they learning that Asian history.
That's right. That's
right.
That's right.
They learning about themselves.
Thanks.
They're learning about their nation. They're learning about what it means to give back to their own community. And ain't some, you got to figure it out. No, they young boys figuring it out for themselves. And so it really is a perfect, I think, analogy of what we have to be doing. We have to be in those trenches doing that sort of work in order to save ourselves from our violence and the valence of violence.
Thank you so much, sir. Family, we got even more questions from the audience, so I want to make sure to give a few more shout outs and get into these. Thank you so much, audience members. I love the engagement on this segment as we continue. Shout out to Brother George X. He said, and this is an open question, what can we do to urge and direct our youth to realize the power of being men and women beyond their pain of living in poverty? Let's say it one more time. From Brother George X, what can we do to urge and direct our youth to realize the power of being men and women beyond their pain of living in poverty? Want to encourage our sisters to answer too. I haven't heard from y'all in a little bit. Gotta have that feminine energy.
Oh yeah, listen, I was ready.
Yes,
ready. I wanted to add something to the question before, but I'm gonna just go for this from the Brother George X.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
No, it's all love. So for me, in short and very simple, I believe that we need to engage the youth. We have to engage the youth, and we have to engage them with a healthy image, right? We have to be that example. We have to teach them, I think, the things that we tripped up. We have to be honest, I think, in how we have had our own experiences and grew through those, right? So I know even for myself, growing up in a household where it's that old saying, like, children are to be seen, not heard. So we kind of, the bridge is broken right there in a way, right? When you're not really explaining to your child the things that you have come through in order to be the person that they see. So you could be this awesome example, but when I can't really bridge the gap that's there to make sense to me how I really walk through this life, right? I'm seeking that. I'm going to seek that everywhere. And so I think that we have to really just engage the youth. It's very simple. I think that in a way, and especially, you know, as we're talking about violence, that there's sometimes a break in the connection between the elders and the youth, right?
Sometimes.
And that's something that really needs to be reconciled again,
Right.
because we need that examples. I still need that example in my 30s from an older woman who can explain to me how womanhood progressed. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm going to seek that because I know that that's where I'm headed. I'm going to seek that. If the youth are not going to come to us, we have to go to them.
Right.
We have to bring them to where we are, and we have to bring them to healthy spaces. We have to show them healthy Black people. Otherwise, they are still going to seek that elsewhere. And the examples that they are getting right now, you know, being pushed into their faces from the media is not healthy for our overall community. So that's what I have to say to that.
Thank you so much. Straight to the Sis Jasmine, you had something for that?
Yeah, just really quick, just to add, I mean, that was a very good point, everything that Sister Zuna had touched on. And I just feel as if, as far as engaging the youth, it's important to really give youth responsibility and give youth leadership roles and make the youth feel as if they have power to make change. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said that any mosque or church or synagogue where there aren't young people is dead. And so you have some organizations, and it's not even just religious organizations, any organization where there are elders or older people that don't want to pass the baton, or they're not ready to pass the baton. And if we give that power and give that responsibility to our youth, they will step up, you know what I mean? And realize the potential that they have. But if they're not given the opportunity, they can't. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you so much, Queen. Y'all hit on it. You know, I thought about engaging the youth. You know, there is, I feel like, a valence of violence that maybe the elders fall victim to when dealing with the youth. You know, you hear all the time, oh man, these young boys crazy. They don't want to hear nothing. They ain't gonna do this and the third. They dangerous, right? So there's this kind of relationship issue where, you know, the elders expect the young people to respect them for the simple fact that they're elders. Okay, praise be to Allah. But then the young people think like, okay, well, you give out respect to get it, right? So just because you done took more steps on the planet than me doesn't necessarily mean that you're my elder, right? So now, oh, y'all disrespect. But see, here's the thing: you got different generations that need to come to the table, and in all honesty, young people desire to make the elders proud. We may not do things the same way, whether you think about social media, things like that. Oh, you get a real job. Well, this is what I do. I kill social media and I make good money or whatever, but just because it's different than you doesn't mean it's any less than. Or I don't necessarily get my hands dirty, but I work this all day, or I impact lives, right? Or, you know, I may be down on my luck right now, but I'm trying. I don't need you to talk at me, you need to talk to me. So when we understand that, it's not that maybe our generation or generation before doesn't want to hear anything. We don't necessarily want to hear it the way you're dishing it out. We have value as well. We've learned things as well, and we've done things as young people that deserve to be not only applauded, but listened to. And let's have a seat at the table so that we may say certain things. Now, on the flip side, again, as I'm going to the next person, we as young people have to learn to understand that in a lot of ways, we are not our ancestors in that we have not been tried as they have. So we cannot get to thinking that we big SHIT because we doing all this rah-rah on social media, or we done marched with Black Lives Matter or done good work. Okay, true, but we are able to do this work because the foundation has been set by people who have come before us. So we got to give respect and credit where credit is due and have a healthy marriage as opposed to being separated and trying to be powerful, one entity in another. That's all I wanted to say on that point. So thank you so much for bringing that up. Dontay, did you have something on that?
Yeah, I wanted to make a quick point. This is just like an example. You know, me and you, Jabril, we've been involved in NSBE. And one of the things I liked about NSBE, which is National Society of Black Engineers, one of the things that I loved about it is that that entire organization is student run. I'm not sure if a lot of people know that. So
Right.
from the national executive board all the way down to the local chapters, it's run by students. So the national executive, he or she, is most likely like a graduate student. Sometimes they can be an undergraduate student or whatever. But all throughout the organization is student run. So, no matter what level you're around students who are pretty much doing the exact same thing as you. You know, they're in engineering in some way, shape, or form, whether they're an undergrad student or they're a graduate student. But most of the time, you're kind of like on the same age group, from the early 20s to probably like mid 20s or a little bit later 20s if you're like a grad student. And one of the things that organization really taught me was that, it had the structure was so set up to where, and we were doing a lot of things on regional national board. We would plan large conferences. We travel all over the country.
Talk about the grind.
Yeah, we were traveling all around the country doing different things, setting up different meetings, talking to different people at different universities, talking to vendors, for hotels and things like that, to set up to do what we had to do. And along the way, we had especially in Region 2, we had like a really, really good advisory board. And this advisory board was made up of, I would say, about maybe eight pretty much like alumni in NSBE, people that's been in NSBE for years. Collectively, I think our advisors had like over 100 years of experience in NSBE, like if you just combined all their experience. And they was really there to help support us and really guide us through the process of, all right, when you go to a hotel and when you're talking to these vendors, these are the things you need to make sure you need to have. These are the things you need to have for a regional conference, and things like that. And like, that was a really inspiring experience for me, because our advisors, they were probably the best advisors that I've ever had, because, even though they knew so much about the organization and they served so many positions over the course of their life, they really had no problem just standing back and letting us do what we thought was best. It was like, all right, well, this is what it is. This is what that is. Now go ahead and do it. And if we fell short, they was going to grill us. If we did good, they gave us our accolades, they gave us our praise. But, that was an organization that really, that really showed you that there's so much you can do. One of the things that my advisor used to say to us is that NSBE doesn't make engineers, NSBE make leaders. And a lot of people that go into that organization are going into it to learn different leadership roles, or learning how to be a leader and running different parts of an organization. So, when you said that, Jabril, about, young people have these experiences that, are really great experiences. You see what I'm saying? That are really experiences that shows that we can do so much more. I think sometimes that's overlooked a lot. By some of the, I'm not going to say all, but by some of the older generation, they don't necessarily understand the type of experiences that we have and the type of experiences that can really propel us and our people into a different state. We're just all links in a chain. So, you just saying that just brought that experience back to mind, bro. And I just thought I should share.
Oh yes, thank you so much, Dontay. Like you said, no one ever said that NSBE statement to me, but it makes perfect sense. Like, National Society of Black Engineers doesn't make engineers, makes leaders. Like, the fact of the matter is, a true engineer is one who leads, right? To be an engineer, you're being innovative. So you're being at the forefront of something, thereby leading. So when you internalize that and are able to translate that into whatever organization you're in and think systemically, and create real change, you're being in alignment with exactly what NSBE is all about. Family, thank y'all so much. Again, this is the Valence of Violence, a false veil creating a destructive reality. I want to give another shout out to some audience members, Brother David Hassan, big brother and mentor of Muhammad Master 12, Brother Mark P. We have another question from Brother George X, and this is an open floor question as well. Feel free to answer. What can be done to help our people realize that impairing a person's psychological integrity through coercion, threats, ostracizing, etc., are aggressive acts that can provoke physical violence? One more time. What can be done to help our people realize that impairing a person's psychological integrity through coercion, threats, ostracizing are aggressive acts that can provoke physical violence? That's a mouthful. We have to take our time on that one, right? Anybody? Yes, go ahead, Brother Lamond. Okay. Brother Lamond?
Well, go ahead, let Sister Jasmine. No, go ahead. You can let Sister Jasmine go. I'll go after her.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Sister Jasmine.
I just wanted to say, you know, I don't know if this directly answers that question, but I think it kind of goes back to the stigma of mental health in the Black community. And sometimes we're not really aware of the issues that we have ourselves and the issues that, you know, our brothers and sisters carry from, you know, again, we were talking about trauma in one of our first sessions and different things that we've been through. We don't understand that a lot of us, again, another session, are ticking time bombs, you know, and a lot of us are really on the edge, you know what I mean, of blowing up, you know. So I think just the education of understanding a lot of our mental states and then why, you know, we've been put into those mental states and in that condition, I think will help that. That makes sense.
Yes, ma'am. That's a big thing. You talked about that those mental states and how people walk around on edge, and they're one statement, you stepped on my wingtips, as Brother Gabriel said, you know, away from blowing up on somebody and punching you in your mouth. And now we got a whole thing on our hands. So proper handling of people, right? And being able to understand how to address someone and understand social cues and have tact. That's a big thing that a lot of people don't have. And they feel like they can say whatever they want and they be taken as a joke or just do things under another false valence of, oh, I'm just being funny, or to demean someone is the only humor out here, right? And then talk about someone and then you get popped in the mouth and then you upset, right? Or, you know, they do whatever they do to you and now you're upset, so, or in danger at that point. So we got to be careful with how we handle people. Brother Lamond.
Well, two things. Brother Ben X had put up a video a couple days ago where a young man and an older man had come across one another. And the older man walked past the young man and really said to him, like, yo, what's good? Like, you know, what's up? And the young man internalized it like he was asking him what's up, like he wanted to engage in a physical confrontation.
Right.
And I say that to say this is that perception ain't reality, but sometimes people make their perception their own reality. And when we're dealing with psychology, we're dealing with the study of the mind. So we're dealing with certain command phrases that are learned behavior. And we must understand, like the brother brought up all those components that are really things that lead to the violence. See, that's those components that brother mentioned is the cause, but the effect is the ultimate violence itself. So I always tell young people that before something gets physical, there's always a verbal encounter before it leads to being a physical reality. Also, I wanted to say this is that in order for us, Sister Zuna brought up a great point about engaging young people. Part of that engaging young people is helping them to understand Satan's playbook. See, our young people got to understand when we say old men for counsel, young men for war, because you are young. And I had to share this with my son. You know, he was getting out of line one day and I had to tell him, I said, son, how old are you? And he was like, well, I'm 25. I said, well, okay, I'm 44. I'll be 44 by the grace of Allah. I said, I sure as hell been 25 before. You ain't never been 40. So there's something in life that I have learned at 25. I've been 25 before. You ain't never been 40. So there's something that you can get from me that I learned at 25 that I have wisdom now at 40 to know how to navigate around and get through. So helping them to understand Satan's playbook of divide and conquer. And Brother Gabe said it, and changing language. Language is so important. Some people say, well, you ain't a God. Well, they had Kanye on this, Kanye West on this show, and Kanye West told the guy straight up, even though Kanye may have his own mental issues, Kanye told the God straight up, he said, I'm God. I'm a God. He said, what would you rather me say? I'm a nigga? I'm a dog? Come on. He said, why you can't accept that I'm telling you I'm a God? So that language in itself is so powerful that even if you're not a developed God, the fact that you have the ability to manifest God in your being and your characteristics, that you're not looking for no ethereal being outside of yourself, that within yourself, you can manifest the power that you're really looking for. And I say Satan's playbook is so important because when the government, who's really been skillfully working on young people to sell them this narrative that the nation killed Malcolm, one of the things of letting them know about this playbook is the government and the Freedom of Information Act really bragged, if you will, that the same template that they used to separate champion Malcolm X from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is the same template that they used to assassinate Fred Hampton and Mark Clark. But if you don't talk to nobody that's an elder, as a young person, you wouldn't know that. So you have to know how the FBI and the CIA infiltrated a lot of our revolutionary organizations and put us against each other, causing us to fight and kill one another. You won't know that in a young person because you didn't live in the 60s or the 70s or 80s. So you would have to humble yourself and let an elder teach you that history of divide and conquer and how they are successfully using that same playbook. It ain't a different playbook. It's just different players now that's operating. They're using the same pawns and they're using the same strategy. But if you don't know that strategy, you will think a lot of this stuff is just happening by happenstance. And in closing, I'll say this. We have to stop reiterating the language about black on black crime. It's very deadly because history shows that 85% of white crimes are committed by white people. But you never hear us say white on white crime. Why don't we use that language? So the language of black and black crime stigmatizes us to, one, accept that narrative that we are the only ones out here killing each other at an alarming rate. White people haven't been known for killing people in all kinds of countries and things of that nature. But what Brother Gabe said, language. See, the more you reiterate something, the minister taught us this: an organized lie is greater than disorganized truth. Right. So when you have a lie, but the lie is organized and you control the airways and you control television, you control media, then you can make that lie appear as if it's true. So we must be cognizant, even though we have crime in our community, to stop taking on this medium or this narrative that black on black crime. No, Negroes kill Negroes. Black people ain't killing black people. Negroes is killing Negroes, and a Negro is a dead human being. And like Gabe said, who would kill God? But if you don't know the man that's sitting next to you is a God, then it's easy to kill a nigga. Because a nigga is a dead human being that doesn't have no value. I digress.
Say that.
Woo! I was locked in. I was locked in. Where the emojis at? Hold on. Emojis at. There you go. Wow. Had to give him a black hand on that one. He said, Negroes kill Negroes. Black people not killing nobody. Woo! Brother Gabe, all right, while I get my thoughts together, you can go ahead and continue on that.
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, back to the, first of all, you know, Lamond be always bringing it down.
Yes.
Always. But one thing I wanted to kind of get across was this concept of, back to the question, and something that Jasmine alluded to as well around mental health. You know, we talked about knowledge of self earlier. You know, part of knowledge of self is knowing oneself and how we're going to react and behave. Because, you know, in the Black community, there's an old wise adage that's been passed down from generation to generation. And this old wise adage is, I ain't the one. See, I ain't the one means a lot. See, when you tell somebody I ain't the one, you're letting a certain message be articulated to the masses of the people. You're saying, whatever you're about to do, I'm letting you know that might work with him.
Right.
That might work with her. Knowledge of self tells me,
right,
I ain't the one.
Come on.
I know how I'm going to respond to this information. I know how I'm going to react to this information. Right? I ain't the one has been a very important and necessary component of our lives from a mental health standpoint. But on elders, you know, one of the things that I think has been a significant problem in our community, just from a standpoint, and you pointed it out in your first statement, Brother Jabril, about fathers. Fathers, you said, is the earned title.
Yes, sir.
I would argue elders is an earned title.
Come on.
Part of the situation is that we got elders, but we got to navigate who's the elders. When I was in my 20s, the hardest part of my rites of passage was figuring out and learning for myself the question, as I looked at all these men around me, who are the elders and who are the oldest? See, the elders were the ones who would take me aside and say, young blood, you're doing something wrong. Hey, youngster, hey, Brother Gabe, you want to go here, not there. The oldest was the ones that was telling me, oh, come out here, do this, that, and the third. They would get jealous of me. In fact, to your point earlier about homicides, we talked about how homicides, we find people who, by their having a lack of power, their only sense of power is killing each other. The olders who only sense of power is trying to have authority over somebody younger than them, but have no other power in, you know, in their life. They have no other authority in their life. They have no other instruction in their life. They have no other direction in their life. The one direction they have in their life is to have young folks underneath them who they can pivot towards the madness and the chaos. So I would think for our family is to make sure that we can show and prove to our younger people, you know, just that critical difference, and being able to have the proper discernment to tap into themselves and say, you know what, let me listen to what, you know, he or she or they're saying. Yeah, he or she's my elder, but them over there, they're just my oldest. That's all.
Thank you so much, sir. Family, with that, I do want to give a few announcements as we're approaching the end of tonight's segment. Consistent with Brother Gabriel's definition and him expanding on true elders, we have a longtime freedom fighter and elder, our Delaware Valley Regional Minister, Brother Dontay Muhammad, will be on the Closing the Gap broadcast tomorrow, October 17th at 7 p.m. That'll be streamed on Facebook, Closing the Gap broadcast, and on YouTube, Closing the Gap broadcast, talking about the 25th anniversary of the Million Man March, Atonement, Reconciliation, and Responsibility. This brother's a wealth of knowledge, knows a bit, more than a bit about, I swear, any and everything. And he will be on that platform again, Closing the Gap broadcast, the head of our ministry class here in the Delaware Valley region. Brothers are again a wealth of knowledge and gives, you know, so much to us in the ministry class and just whoever he's teaching at any given time. Also, for anyone in the area, Northwest Philadelphia, Uptown area tomorrow. The Mighty Fruit of Islam, the Nation of Islam of Muhammad Muslim 12 will be out with the Final Call newspaper commemorating the Million Man March. We'll be out in present. So if you want to get your physical copy, meet us out there. We'll be out around 11, perhaps 11 to 1. Make sure you get your copy or tell someone else who lives in that area to come and meet your brothers as we strive to make our communities a safe and decent place to live. And lastly, or one of the last things, shameless plug. So as I said initially, I am the co-host of the STEM Files, right, where we highlight the best and brightest in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. We will have our brother, Dr. Shahid Muhammad, the math doctor, on our platform, the STEM Files on YouTube and Facebook. He will be talking about coronavirus by the numbers. So getting accurate numbers of the coronavirus and going into, from mathematical perspective, what we have witnessed with coronavirus. So with Jabril Engineer, my partner Tariq Cardiac, that's tomorrow at 6 p.m. The STEM Files, the voice of STEM talent and Black culture. Anything else, family, before we wrap this up? Anybody?
Yeah, I did want to, off of that very last question from the audience,
Yes,
something that Brother Gabriel also brought up earlier about the normalization of violence, right? For me, it seems that violence in our community is normalized by the normalization of the lack of emotional maturity. That's the piece that's missing, right? So when we are young and we never get, what it is to handle our emotions, right? How we handle our emotions when they come up. When we don't receive that in a healthy way, we just go with what we think, right? And we're being led more so by our emotions than to be having that knowledge of self, right? Tying that in, having that knowledge of self and knowing that, let me take a step back, right? Because I feel some things coming up in me and maybe I need to address that, not to lash out at this person, right? Even with the children, right? In their early school years, they tell them to talk it out, right? To talk it out, to talk through it. We forget very basic things, I feel like, as we grow and we're operating around each other that we learned early on, right? And sometimes we have to take that step back. So in that way, I feel like for what the brother asked, I think that we have to get to a place where we are being more focused on learning emotional maturity, what it is to explain yourself and your feelings, right? To not shun someone from explaining their feelings, to not shut people down because, they tell you that something that you said hurt them. We have to figure out how to communicate better, and maybe that comes along with creating our own institutions where we teach the youth and they can be raised up in that way. But I believe that as far as us right here, right now, people who are calling themselves adults and operating in a childish way, you have to think about how you interact with other people, how you are allowing your emotions to spill over onto other people. If that's something that you need help with, then you need to seek someone with help for that, to be honest. That's where we need to be. We need to stop shying away from seeking help for things that we do not know. It is not your fault for something that you do not know, but you absolutely have to take responsibility to find that knowledge. Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Queen. Emotional maturity. I think that, there's no better way to kind of end tonight's segment than that. Thank y'all so much, our illustrious panelists, for giving your more than 2 cents, millions of dollars, if you will, in not only content, but just, information to us as we, talked about tonight's topic, the valence of violence, a false veil creating a destructive reality. It has been an honor to be your host and moderator. Every session, I learned so much, as we guide this conversation. May Allah continue to bless us as we continue with one final session. But without further ado, I really want to bring some of the brothers who make things happen behind the scenes, our co-chairpersons, Brother Leroy Muhammad and Brother Anthony Muhammad, if he's available, on screen at this time to close us out. Thank y'all so much. the audience members, and may Allah bless us all to continue in this fight and this struggle to make our communities a safe and decent place to live.
Thank you, Brother Jabril. Thank you, Brother Gabe. Thank you, Brother Dontay, Brother Lamond, Sister Zuma, and Sister Jasmine. Thank you very much. This is outstanding panel tonight. Outstanding discussion. I felt like I was at a Parliament Funkadelic show or something, man. Y'all really improved my interplanetary funkmanship tonight. Y'all had so much flavor. It was great. And I pray that all in the audience received as I received. At this point, I would like to bring out the two brothers that you haven't seen all night, but without them, I would be nowhere. Brother Anthony, if he's there, I'd like him to come forward. And our IT doctor, Brother Sabir, let the people see your faces. Let them be aware of the core body of the 10,000 Fearless here in Philadelphia. If they would come forward, that would be nice. All right. Well, I can't see from the phone that I'm looking at right now. My screen at the house here is going in and out. There's Brother Anthony. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yes,
Brother
sir.
Sabir,
Yes, sir.
you there as well? All right. Good to see you, brother. Assalamu alaikum. And Brother Sabir, are you there?
I peeked out on y'all already. I'm good.
All right.
Always a pleasure, though.
Yes, yes. Thank you, brothers. It's really been a gas. And I'm looking forward to number 5. This was the 4th of the 5 installments. I want you all to tune in. Pay close attention to our webpage, our Facebook and Instagram page. Keep attuned to what it is that we're doing. If you'd like to become a member and join on to our efforts, please feel free to do so. We're well within reach. You can use this page in the chat room this evening before you depart and put some information down. It will be private, so we'll be able to see it. And we'll take it from there. I would like to read something before I close out this evening. Something that I read earlier today, and I thought it was very interesting. I wish I knew where I was reading from right now. And my head was in quite a few books, but I want to read this for all our panelists today. It says here, when you operate in a gift, you don't have to be at the head of the table, for wherever you sit or stand, the table and the room will shift. Thank you all. And from the family of the 10K Fearless Philadelphia, we like to leave as we came before you this evening with peace and love, and leave you in the nation's greetings of peace and of paradise. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Salam, sir. Peace.